Does any of you ever go to the Crucible Steam charts just to make yourself sad? Yeah, me neither, I totally don't do that. As I speak, Crucible has a total of less than 400 active players, with a peak of 862 in the last 24 hours, so not even reaching 1000 players anymore. The highest peak of the game after launch was 10,600 players, still not super impressive considering that it was Amazon's first release. We can maybe chalk that up to not the heaviest promotion being used at that point yet, but overall still a very disappointing outcome. But make no mistake, this is not a surprise. But in my opinion, it's still very sad because of the potential that the game had and still has. I made a video in the past discussing Crucible's issues, the things that I thought needed to be changed the most. In today's video, we are going to go over the 4 issues that led to Crucible's downfall, in my opinion, which kind of connects with that video to some extent, but it's different points overall. It's in a different structure. And then in addition to that, we're also going to talk about the future of Crucible and the plans that the devs currently have. So let's begin with the 4 big issues that led to the Crucible player numbers being what they are today. The first one was a failure to provide functioning server systems. This started with the server issues that were present on the first days, where players couldn't queue in any region except NA, and then extended further when many players were never even matched on their local servers at all, even when the servers were supposedly present. This was a major concern for me personally. I could basically almost never play a game on the Oceanic servers, which is a big part of the reason why I didn't feel any urge to play. I just didn't feel like playing on high ping all the time. So everyone who was not located in either NA or EU basically stopped playing. And even among those, there were many that were shifted between servers for no reason. The second point are the issues regarding the usability and the new player experience. One of the major points of my last video really, if you want to watch that. And the biggest problem with all that was the failure to provide necessary improvements within a very short time frame. So there would have had to be voice comms and a minimap very, very quickly. It is understandable to me that those changes were not provided in time, because those are not systems you can easily just pull up in 2 days. But the fact that they weren't initially planned, it seems, or were planned for much later, and all this surrounding stuff was also coming into slowly, meant that the players who were waiting for these features already left and won't be around by the time they come out. The third big issue is that the game missed its target audience. A lot of the people promoting the game, that were paid to promote the game as well, are players that primarily play normal classic shooters and battle royale guys. And it seems that a lot of them had issues understanding many of the concepts in the game. If the game was heavily promoted primarily by MOBA players, I think the reception in terms of the learning curve would have been a very different one. If they would have enjoyed it is another question, but the learning curve and the combat are much closer to a MOBA than to, well, a battle royale or any other type of shooter, and that definitely showed, and that even showed in the battle royale mode of the game itself. So definitely missed the mark there a little bit, and the promotion, I think, should have been more targeted. And the fourth and last big issue was a lack of communication regarding the preseason status. The game was announced as if it was a normal launch, while the developers kind of had the perception of it being in this preseason status, and they actually launched it as a preseason as well. So there was a preseason battle pass in the game, but it was never really fully explained that this was essentially an early access state. It's an alpha state or whatever you want to call it. It was not labeled early access on Steam either. And if they would have done that, the perception of the game could have been much different, and it would have done a lot less damage in the long run, because a lot of the current reviews would have been wiped by the time the game goes into full release, and now I don't think that will happen. But as of today, the devs have announced their plans for the game, and it actually sounds pretty promising in my opinion. The game is going to stay in preseason until it's considered ready. That means the preseason will likely be extended, and it'll just be extended until all the features that the community has been asking for are implemented. They are also planning to publish a roadmap later down the road, but they also gave us a ton of information already. The goal is to make Heart of the Hives the core game mode in the future, and they are very serious about making it the core game mode. That means they can make specific changes that make Heart of the Hives specifically feel more balanced, like for example changing the map or creatures or the respawn system, which is all easier to be done for one mode than 3. There no longer needs to be any compromise between the modes. What this also implies is that the Alpha Hunter mode will be retired completely, and this will happen very soon, basically now, because it just doesn't mesh well with the concept of Heart of the Hives, and it didn't have enough of a player base to justify it. I see this as a very good step because I think that Battle Royale and this game aren't exactly a great match, and it may just be misleading for Battle Royale players that come over more than anything else. The plan is to also retire the Harvester Command mode in the future when Heart of the Hives is easier to learn. This one I found a little bit surprising because I thought that Harvester Command was an interesting, fun, casual mode, just a bit brainless mode really. I imagine this may be due to the player base, so that they can have a better control of matchmaking and everything, because if you have that split between 2 modes, then obviously it's harder to find matches and everything. Furthermore, the devs have announced that they are going to release various improvements to the game in multiple stages. The stage 1 is basically reiterating core game systems and increasing the overall quality. This includes the following features: introduction of a voice chat, a surrender option in games that are not going well, a system that helps you in some way when players go AFK, I suppose by replacing them with others somehow, an expanded ping system that is more context sensitive for Heart of the Hive specifically as well, some form of minimap, however exactly that will look, improvements to the frame rate, which I know they have already been working on. I already saw some improvements with the latest GeForce update, a better hit feedback in combat and a generally better feel of combat, something that a lot of people said was a major lackluster aspect, better matchmaking, and new ways to teach players the game. This is already a pretty good laundry list of features that are requested by many players, so I do think that they're taking a very good approach here. And that brings us to stage number 2, where we'll see additional changes. So they will implement multiple changes based on the feedback for stage 1 changes, of course, but along with that they already have some changes planned for the stage 2, and then we'll just add more over time. One feature that they will add is custom games, which will also allow you to specifically set up matches for your regions, which can help low population regions. They're also redoing and customizing the map specifically for Heart of the Hives. I am assuming this might come along with a slightly smaller map as well. They are changing the creatures, again, specifically to work better in Heart of the Hives. And they also want to implement the Steam Friends system into the game itself, so you can add people in-game and everything. There will be a revised spawn system. I'm assuming they're looking at less downtime after spawning or while spawning. And they're also planning to do Twitch drops in the future. Outside of that, they're also planning to do community events and tournaments, but those may already be starting earlier, so that doesn't necessarily have to start in phase 2. One change that I think this list is still severely lacking, if the game ever gets sufficient traction again to build a larger player base, is an option to limit the regions you can somehow get queued into, or just generally improve that system so people actually get matched in their own region as long as there are enough players. I have brought that point up to the dev team and hope they take that into consideration. Now let me say this about Crucible. Despite its very bad launch and despite the flaws that it has, I think the core gameplay is still great. I love how the combat plays out. I love the mobility in combat and the fast-paced combat with the relatively high time to kill. It's exactly my thing, and I honestly miss that type of combat already. The only game that really ever fulfilled that for me was Gigantic. And I think Crucible can end up being a really good game. But I think they also have their work cut out for them. I don't know if they have any option to go into early access at this point. I highly doubt it. And I don't think they will have any way to get rid of any of the negative reviews from the original launch of the game. And I think that the launch already left a big stain on the game's name as well. So a lot of players will simply not return because of how the game started. It's kind of the No Man's Sky story in that regard. So even if there's a full redemption arc, this is going to be very hard to come back from. If they can, will also depend a lot on Amazon's money and how much they want to invest into promoting the game, potentially even more than they did at the start for this pre-alpha, whatever launch. But that's all still in the stars. As for me personally, I would love to return to Crucible in terms of content at some point in the future. It's just not exactly feasible for me until the server situation has improved, because playing every game on lag is not something that I want to do when it basically prevents me from playing half of the roster properly. But yeah, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on the game's development in the future, and hopefully it can turn things around. We don't know yet, and obviously it's going to be a very uphill battle, but there is a chance and there is a big company behind it, so we'll have to see. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, feel free to hit the sub button and maybe the bell, so you'll be notified when anything significant happens in Crucible and otherwise about Smite stuff. See you for the next one soon. DukeSloth out.